You don't lack discipline. You don't lack ambition, and you're definitely not confused in the way people keep telling you. What you actually feel is pulled in too many directions at once. One part of you wants to go all in on a career path. Another part gets restless the moment things become predictable. You start something, you feel alive, engaged, and then suddenly it fades. Not because you're lazy, but because something inside you shifts. And then comes the guilt, the quiet voice that says, why can't I just stick to one thing? Why does everyone else seem so certain? Am I wasting my potential? If this kind of psychology-based content helps you understand yourself better, subscribe now, because this channel is built for people who are trying to decode what's really happening inside their own mind. Because what you're experiencing isn't random, and it's definitely not a flaw, but the mistake you've been making with your career work is quietly keeping you stuck in a loop. And once you see it, you won't be able to unsee it. And yet most people assume that multi-passionate people struggle because they can't decide. But that's not actually the problem. The real issue is the way you've been taught to think about careers in the first place. You've been given a model that was never designed for how your mind works. A model that says, pick one thing, commit, specialize, stay consistent. And for some people that works perfectly. But for you, it feels like trying to compress something wide and dynamic into something narrow and rigid. So when you lose interest, you don't see it as feedback, you see it as failure. When your curiosity pulls you in a new direction, you don't trust it. You question yourself. You start to believe that your ability to care about many things is the very reason you'll never succeed in anything. But what if that interpretation is wrong? What if the issue isn't that you have too many interests, but that you've been trying to force them into the wrong structure? One way to understand this is through how your brain processes novelty and meaning. Psychology suggests that some people have a higher sensitivity to exploration-driven motivation. That means your brain is wired to light up when you're learning something new, connecting ideas or expanding your understanding, not just achieving, but discovering. Your attention works like a spotlight that constantly scans for stimulation, growth, and possibility. And when something becomes repetitive too quickly, your brain doesn't interpret it as progress. It interprets it as stagnation. So the drop in motivation you feel isn't random. Your mind may be treating that situation as something that no longer provides enough cognitive or emotional reward. And instead of recognizing that signal for what it is, you override it. You tell yourself to push through, to be more disciplined, to just stick with it. But internally, something feels off. And that creates tension, because now you're fighting your own wiring. At the same time, there's another layer happening beneath this. Research points to the idea that identity plays a huge role in sustained motivation. When people feel aligned with who they are becoming, they can tolerate boredom, repetition, and difficulty much more easily. But when there's a mismatch, even small friction feels exhausting. So if you've been forcing yourself into identities that don't fully fit, I'm only this kind of person, I should only do this one thing, you create a subtle identity conflict. Part of you commits, another part resists, and that resistance doesn't feel logical. It just feels like you're inconsistent. So here's the reframe that changes everything. You are not someone who struggles to commit. You are someone whose mind is designed to integrate. You don't just want to do things, you want to connect them. You don't just want a career, you want a system of expression. Your interests aren't distractions. They're data points. They're signals pointing toward patterns you haven't fully mapped yet. The problem is, you've been treating each interest as a separate path you have to choose between, instead of seeing them as pieces of a larger architecture you're meant to build. It's like trying to choose one color, when your strength is in creating the entire palette. And every time you abandon something, it feels like loss. But what if it's actually layering? What if nothing you've explored is wasted, but simply unfinished in isolation? Because multi-passionate people don't thrive by narrowing themselves. They thrive by structuring their variety. And this is where the real shift happens. Not in forcing yourself to focus harder, but in designing your life in a way that works with your psychology. There are a few ways to start doing that. The first is to stop thinking in terms of careers and start thinking in terms of themes. Instead of asking, what should I commit to forever? Ask, what patterns keep showing up and what I'm drawn to. Maybe you're interested in psychology, storytelling, and design. At first glance, they seem unrelated. But underneath, there might be a theme of understanding people and expressing ideas in engaging ways. When you focus on the theme, you're no longer choosing between interests. You're aligning them. And suddenly, your path starts to feel more coherent. The second shift is to separate curiosity from commitment. Right now, you might be treating every new interest as something that has to become your main thing, which creates pressure, and that pressure kills exploration. Instead, allow yourself to explore without forcing immediate long-term decisions. Think of it like running experiments instead of making life contracts. This removes the fear of wasting time because the goal isn't permanence, it's information. And over time, those experiments reveal patterns you can actually trust. The third is to build what you might call a portfolio life. Instead of relying on one single role to fulfill everything, you create multiple streams of expression. This doesn't mean chaos, it means intentional structure. You might have one area that provides stability, another that fuels creativity, another that satisfies your curiosity. Each one serves a different part of your psychology, and together they create balance. For someone like you, fulfillment doesn't come from one perfect path. It comes from a well-designed combination. The fourth shift is learning how to stay past the initial excitement without losing yourself. Because yes, there's a point where leaving too early becomes a pattern. But the solution isn't blind persistence, it's conscious depth. When something starts to feel boring, instead of immediately exiting, ask, is this actually misaligned, or have I just reached the part that requires skill building? Because there's a difference between loss of interest and a resistance to effort. One feels empty, the other feels uncomfortable but meaningful. Learning to tell the difference is a skill, and developing that awareness allows you to go deeper without forcing yourself into the wrong things. And finally, you need to redefine what consistency means for you. Consistency doesn't have to mean doing the same thing forever. For you, it might mean consistently evolving within a connected direction. It might mean staying loyal to your themes, even as your methods change. That's a different kind of stability. Less rigid, but far more sustainable. When you start seeing yourself this way, something shifts. The shame begins to fade, the confusion starts to organize itself, and the pressure to figure it all out softens because you realize you've never actually been lost. You've just been navigating without the right map. And now you're starting to see the structure underneath your instincts. You're starting to understand why your mind works the way it does. And more importantly, how to work with it, not against it. So if you've been feeling like you're falling behind, like everyone else has clarity that you don't, consider this. Maybe they're not ahead. Maybe they're just on a different path, one that requires less integration. And your path, it's not slower. It's more complex, which means it takes longer to fully see. But when it comes together, it creates something most people can't replicate: depth, range, connection. So instead of trying to become someone who fits a narrow system, start building a system that fits you. And if you want to go deeper into understanding how your mind actually works, there's another video that breaks this down even further. Because the more clearly you see yourself, the easier it becomes to move forward without constantly second-guessing who you are.